Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. We are continuing this safety series. This is the last video that I have for you. Thank you for hanging on so far. Uh, this is really important to our organization. I just went through 4 videos that talked about 101 critical days of summer. And now we're going to kind of tie it all up, talking about kind of CAP specific, operational safety, but also our leadership culture and how to make that work together. So, without further ado, here we go. What we are trying to do is create a culture where we are not afraid to do the right thing. And too often, cultures have really gone out to punish people rather than create the conditions where we can prevent something from happening again. And I would rather we focused on preventing issues in a healthy way than shutting down the conversations and not knowing something had happened that was preventable. So this slide deck I put together. I used AI to do it. I think it came out really well. We are going to talk about some, different issues here. And this was based on input received from General A, our national commander. So thank you for attending to this. If we want to be great at what we have to do, we have to have the right culture in place and we have to have that psychological safety net that people are not afraid to come up and report a hazard. Um, in the past, in other places I've worked, that folks were punished, right, because they didn't do things correctly. And this always leads me back to my Air Force training that as a leader, you're asking yourself 4 questions. When something is not going right, you're asking yourself 4 questions. The first question is was the individual aware of the standard? Did they know about the standard? 2, were they trained to ensure that they can meet that standard? 3, did they have the right equipment to meet that standard? And 4, was the right environment in place? So this is talking about that culture that you always hear me say, if it was fun, there's probably a safety issue. But the other one is, if it's funny, there's probably a harassment issue involved, right? That we are creating conditions to put people down. And so not having the right environment, right? That we have a culture that I'm a colonel and you can't tell me how to do something. That is the wrong culture. We are here looking for operational excellence. And so this is kind of put together. So we have to create the right leadership environment. So the 4 areas that we are going to kind of focus on are crew operations, vehicle safety, cadet health, and reporting culture. So crew operations, right? What we do is inherently dangerous. And it becomes more dangerous when we increase the urgency about doing it. There is urgency in what we do in terms of looking for a downed pilot, missing aircraft, or in case of a disaster where we're out filming, right? There's a lot of urgency to do this, but we have to do it safely, right? We have to make the right decisions in what we are doing. We have to think about safety, not to the point where we don't do anything, because everything has a risk to it. But we have to make sure that we are aware of the risks and we mitigate what the risks are. And this means everyone from the mission staff who are looking at where the target is and making sure that we deconflict airspaces and all of that, to the crew, where you have a pilot, an observer, a scanner, or an airborne photographer, and that everyone has the ability to have input into what's happening. And everybody has the ability to stop an unsafe activity, even if it delays the mission. Okay, so we have to do it right over doing it fast. We have to do it right safely over doing it fast. So if you have a cockpit, right, thinking about your crew, where folks are afraid to bring up a safety issue, then you are building an unsafe cockpit. Okay. And things that get in the way, group dynamics, right? That there is a tendency to, well, the pilot didn't say anything, so they know what's going on, and I shouldn't mention this plane that's heading towards us, right? If they didn't see it, it shouldn't be a worry. Well, maybe they didn't see it, and it would be a lot safer if you just say, "Hey, just letting you know, we got traffic at 3 o'clock," and then you have done your part to bring that to their attention, okay? Or bias, that we have done this way always. Well, that doesn't mean it's the right way. And there are observations that I have made. We have a wonderful wing, but I have brought things to folks' attention, and it's like, well, I didn't know. We've always done it this way. Yeah, but that's not how the reg reads. That's not the proper way to do it. So making sure that we put that in check. Are we doing it the correct way and not the way that we have done it, since the 1940s? And the other piece is the hierarchy. Well, they outrank me, so they should know better, right? Farthest thing from the truth. We have people in our organization from all walks of life, and some of them have a rank because of other attributes, a professional grade, or they come from the military and they brought their grade with them, but they don't know the CAP way, and so these are always problems, right? If you have a silent cockpit, you are creating a dangerous cockpit, right? So you need to make sure, as a leader, that you are asking people to speak up when things are not right. Okay. And that we're focused on safety, but that could be operationally not following the regs the way they're supposed to be done. Vehicles, right? We have a lot of vehicles. We use them all the time, right? We just got done with 101 days of critical days of safety, and we talked about vehicle operations. A lot of these things come into play. If something happens to our vehicle, we need to report it. Okay. But we also have to get ahead of things. For example, backing. The greatest majority of our issues are when we are backing our vehicle. And the fact that we continue to back without a spotter is an issue, right? And we need to make sure that, one, we are using a spotter. When I was in Wyoming, we had an actual search going on for a missing hiker, and we had a ground team out. They were actually looking in an area. They spent the day out in the area, and they come back to their vehicle, and they're exhausted. I get it. And this is a 10-pack vehicle, and all the seats were full. All the seats are full. And they had a backing accident. They backed up and they dented the vehicle. Now, no, this wasn't a van. This was a suburban, right? Because it had a hatch in the back. So, but the vehicle was full. Um, there was 8 in the vehicle. They backed and they dented the hatch because they backed into a pole. And what I came to realize is out of all 8 of those individuals, nobody got out of the vehicle to make sure that they could back safely. And if they had been out there, they would have noticed the hatch up and they would probably have closed the hatch. So they were tired. They didn't perform according to standards because that was how it was supposed to be done correctly. Fortunately, they did report it, but there's also small dents on our vehicles that have never been reported, right? And so we have to make sure that we're not punishing people because of accidents. We want to make sure that they're aware of the standard, trained to the standard, have the right equipment, have the right environment to perform to that standard. But when things go wrong, we have to know about it. And so reporting even those small instances, okay? Because if we don't take care of the small stuff, they lead to bigger stuff later, okay? So some mindset on that, right? And I want to focus really on the CAP mindset. Um, if we normalize small damage, then we are degrading our fleet because we're creating conditions for bigger damage. Because what is minor damage, right? Define that, right? Is it just a scratch? Is it just a small dent? Is it, well, it's the bumper is kind of moved out of play. What is small minor damage, right? And then at what point does it become major damage that we just don't report? Okay. Fatigue. We talked about this in the 101 critical days of summer. Um, get homeitis is a real problem. It's like, well, I'm close to home. I can get there. It's only another hour. Um, and because of fatigue, we overextend ourselves, right? We don't have additional drivers. We don't take breaks. All right. There's things that we are supposed to do, and the regs spell this out. So go back and familiarize yourself with what it is, right? Just being accountable. If you are signing for a vehicle, you are accountable for that vehicle, right? You need to treat it with the care that it is, not just a rental vehicle. Okay. Um, it's not a rental vehicle, right? It's you need to be the leader there. You need to own this, own and be responsible for it. Let's talk about cadets. We are entering a season where we are going to have encampments. We are going to have all kinds of great summer activities. And folks are going to exert themselves during these activities. Okay. That they're going to get overheated. They may faint. They may have a heat exhaustion. We are not in the business of toughening somebody up, right? We need to create the conditions where this does not happen in the first place. We need to make sure there's adequate time to hydrate, adequate time to get out of the sun, into the shade, take a break, right? We are not there to break cadets down, right? This is not what we do. This is not what leaders do. Leaders are there to make sure that their members can work at that optimal capacity that they have, which means you take care of your people. Leadership is about two important things: getting the mission done, take care of your people. Take care of your people because they get the mission done, right? This is what leaders do. So, things to think about, right? At the leader level, right? You're checking out how hot it's going to be today. What Where the breaks are in our schedule, right? What are we doing? When are they doing? Why are we drilling at 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the hot sun? Why aren't we doing that in the morning? Why aren't we doing indoor in the air conditioned classroom stuff in the afternoon, right? So just thinking about it. If it's too hot, then you got to cancel the activity, right? But you can move those things around. At the people level, right? Everyone needs to be thinking about the heat, right? Are we getting breaks? Are we getting out of the sun? When are we taking the blouse off, right? Um, you know, can we dial down the tempo a little bit, right? But then at the individual level, not just cadets, but also senior members, that if they are struggling, they need to sound the alarm. They need to raise their hand and say, I need to take a break. I'm about to pass out, right? And those things are absolutely critical. Things that we need to be thinking about, right? Optimal, we're regulating all this stuff. We got a work rest cycle. We are getting fluid intake. But when things start moving away from that, then things start to break down, right? If water is not being given at a regular cycle, right, then things are not operating at the full capacity. And then it ends up being a medical event. And then you got to deal with that. So if you do the things properly up front, then you can control unnecessary medical events. Okay. And this starts with you. You have to model this. You have to, be with your people and suddenly go, time for a break, and do the breaks accordingly. All right, last section, reporting culture, right? Reporting is being a professional, right? When things go wrong, own up to it. Okay? Stand up and say, we did this, right? If you are afraid to report, then your culture's broke. Okay? You must be comfortable to be able to report and get this right. So this doesn't have to deal with safety, but it talks about organizational excellence. I've been listening to a lot of videos lately talking about the United States military in World War II. And we became an exceptional military because we learned from our mistakes. There was a culture in place that after every battle, you did an after action review. Not assigning blame, just stating the fact this was supposed to happen. This is how it really happened. This is what we could do better. This is what we did great. But not blaming somebody for one thing or another. And the military learned so rapidly that one, it confused our enemy, but we became a dominating force. And it was the leadership trying to learn about things that were not necessarily going well, but how to fix those. And that is all based on leadership and having the right culture. Okay. So there is this Swiss cheese when in terms of safety that if the right number of holes line up, then you have an unsafe act. Okay. And that, the organizational factors, are we following the regs like we're supposed to, right? Unsafe supervision, are we not, calling attention and creating a safety culture, one that is allowing everyone to speak up when things are not going right. Okay. And if the conditions are, incorrect, then we end up with unsafe acts. And so our goal as leaders is to get ahead of that. Okay. The green flags, right? The reaction when something happens that's unsafe. What allowed this to happen? What were the conditions that allowed this to happen, right? Are folks reporting it like they're supposed to? Once it's reported, do we learn from it and act upon it in order to prevent it from happening again? Or do the reports just disappear? Right? I think we do a good job. We talk about this, right? We talk about, things when they go wrong. Fortunately, at least for the past year, we haven't had issues to speak of. Okay, so but we have talked about the couple that have we have discussed those. So if you want an excellent organization, you need to get everybody involved to do that. Okay? If you are not reporting things, right, not having those conversations, you are creating an unsafe culture, right? That if we're not stepping up to address it when it needs to be addressed, then we're opening ourselves up for increased scrutiny. Okay. So let me know what you think, right? I would love to hear what your input is. So feel free to email me directly. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking. So thank you ever so much for um, hanging out with me, talking about these really important safety issues and thoughts and concepts. Uh, we're in summer, so just be safe out there. Okay? And we will see you somewhere around the wing. Bye for now.